It is no secret that Shadow Machamp is one of the best Pokemon in the Ultra League Premier Cup, and also is making a good showing in the Ultra League Remix Cup as well in Go Battle League in Pokemon Go. When the Ultra League Premier Cup first came out, Shadow Machamp stood out as being just a hyper-aggressive neutral Pokemon. I mean, fighting and rock-type coverage, basically perfect neutral coverage there. And now that we're in the land of XL Pokemon, Shadow Machamp has gained the reputation of being the XL Slayer. So building Shadow Machamp is even more relevant now than what it has been before, and to be honest, it was pretty relevant before. So to help you guys decide which Shadow Machamp you should build in your roster, I decided to throw this PvP IV deep dive together to help you make the choice. Now, one thing I will say about this PvP IV deep dive here is compared to the other PvP IV guides I've done in the past, I'd treat this one more as a consolation PvP IV kind of thing. So it's not like the hyper idealized, this is way better than the rank 1 100% of the time type of Shadow Machamp. It's just sort of giving you some important cutoffs. Like if you have a tiebreaker to make when it comes to powering up a Shadow Machamp, this will provide you with those tiebreakers so you can build a better Shadow Machamp. Will the hyper idealized Shadow Machamp from this be better than the rank 1? Not exactly, but it will pose some interesting advantages over the rank 1. And if you're curious about normal Machamp does have a different attack and defense stat compared to Shadow Machamp, but I will be talking about that too in this video. So what are the ideal stat checkoffs here on Shadow Machamp? Well, for starters, you're going to want to have roughly a 175.5 attack stat. A little bit lower isn't that big of a deal. A little bit higher could be even better. When it comes to the defense stat, you're going to want to have at least a 124 defense stat. A little bit higher, once again, could be appreciated. But I wouldn't go too much lower than like a 123.6 defense stat. 124, probably the ideal cutoff there. And then when it comes to HP, I mean, the main cutoffs are going to be the attack and the defense here, so as much HP as you can cram into your Shadow Machamp after that. If you do need a cutoff, I probably wouldn't want to go too much lower than 158, but it doesn't seem to be influencing matchups as much as the attack and the defense will be. Now, longtime subscribers of SwagTips that also have like diamond memories will recall that this is basically the checkoffs I gave in my Ultimate Ultra League Premier Cup video, where I featured using Shadow Machamp with Gengar and Snorlax. That team actually does hold up really well nowadays too, which is kind of funny, and it's also doing well in the Ultra League Remix Cup here too. So hey, it was the ultimate team back then and it's the ultimate team now, so those Machamp checkoffs are as good now as they were then, which I also find to be kind of interesting here. Of course, in this PvP IV deep dive video, I do focus even harder on the potential advantages that you can gain with these checkoffs. So starting out, let's talk about the defense here. The 124 defense is primarily for the Venusaur breakpoint. Venusaur, Vine Whip breakpoint there. 124 defense should protect you against most Venusaur. That said, if you are up against an attack-weighted Venusaur, such as a raid-caught Venusaur, there was that clone event a while back where you could get like a special skin on like Venusaur, Charizard, and Blastoise, so a lot of people might be using those ones. And if you are worried about those attack-weighted Venusaurs, having like a 125 defense that can protect you against like some of them, 126 defense will protect you against most of the attack-weighted Venusaurs. So if you are super concerned about an attack-weighted Venusaur, then you may want to go that route. So how important is getting this Vine Whip breakpoint on Machamp here? Honestly, it doesn't appear to be as important now as it used to be. With the 2021 January update, they changed Rock Slide's base power from 80 to 75, so there was like a important scenario against like the Venusaur lead with Shadow Machamp, where getting that, Vine Whip breakpoint was super important with that. But I think with the base power of Rock Slide changing, it got rid of that matchup, which is unfortunate for Shadow Machamp. I guess good news for Venusaur. So it doesn't appear to be as important as it used to be. But what I do remember is that if you go too much lower than that defense stat there, you do start opening yourself up to other breakpoints, such as Dragonite, Dragon Breath breakpoints, which is super bad. You really don't want any Dragon Breath user getting a breakpoint on you, and Dragonite and Shadow Dragonite are both ultra prevalent in the Ultra League, especially the Premier Cup there. So I'd say stick to 124 defense stat as your checkoff. You could thrift a little bit below and not get hurt too much, but if you need a checkoff, that's the checkoff. So what's going on with the 175.5 or higher attack stat? How important is this attack stat? Well, we're not getting any breakpoints with this attack stat, but what we are gaining with a 175.5 or higher attack stat is CMP in a handful of relevant matchups in the Ultra League Premier Cup, and I guess by extension the Ultra League Remix Cup as well. So no breakpoints here. There are some breakpoints, but they don't really change the matchups that much. But the CMP is what's happening here. And when it comes to Machamp, Machamp is the kind of Pokemon that is going to find itself in those uneven energy and uneven shield situations. And as a result, being able to win a CMP tie against some important matchups can be a really big deal for Machamp. I rifled through a bunch of Pokemon on PvPoke here, and I highlighted several that I came across that do have a within range attack stat for Machamp, and then I also bolded the ones that I feel like are more relevant for Machamp to try to get this CMP tie situation over. The most of which is going to be the Dragonite, the Machamp Mirror of course, and then Magnezone, and then Pango and Shiftry is also one that you may want to keep your eye out for as well. Then also Charizard is on here. Typhlosion has the same exact stats as Charizard, so you can think of Charizard as also being Typhlosion here. But yeah, as a result, you do have the potential to now flip these matchups, or at least land your charge move before they land their charge move with your Shadow Machamp, should you have this attack stat. Now, does this make the Atk Weighted Machamp here way better than the rank 1? Only potentially. Just like how the higher bulk on the rank 1 Shadow Machamp can give it the potential to overcome matchups that the Atk Weighted Machamp might be losing. At the end of the day, it's hard to say for sure if that extra bulk on the rank 1 is going to matter, and it's hard to say that if this attack weight getting the CMP tie situation here, if that's going to matter more as well. But what I do know is that you can't catch thousands of Shadow Machamps like you can do with regular Machamps. And as a result, you only have a limited pool of Shadow Machamps that you personally can choose from to build for PvP. As a result, if you don't have the top 20 rank of Shadow Machamp here, but you do have a Shadow Machamp candidate that hits this attack stat and hits the aforementioned defense stat there, well then that could be your best Machamp to build. So once again, this isn't like pinpointing the ultimate IV spread way better than the rank 100% of the time IV spread on a Shadow Machamp here. This is merely giving you some cutoffs, some benchmarks for tiebreakers should you want to build a Shadow Machamp for the Ultra League. And then to add to that, if you already built a Shadow Machamp for the Ultra League and you're considering building a second one, then these cutoffs can also guide you in that decision making as well. But if you already do have like the rank 1 built, or like the top 20 of all Shadow Machamp already built for the Ultra League, then I don't think building a second one is going to give you that big of an advantage. That said, if you find yourself losing these CMP ties more often than not, then you may want to start considering, maybe an Atk Weighted Machamp is where it's at. So I have some canned IV spreads here using the top 250 IV spreads for Ultra League Machamp, and then I just kind of filtered it by the attack stat and by the defense stat. So here are like 32 IV spreads that hit these and also have a really good rank for Ultra League Machamp here. Once again, these aren't like the hyper idealized, like this is always going to be better than the rank 1 Machamp type of IVs here. It's just a handful of IV spreads that hit the attack stat and the defense stat highlighted in this video that also have a good rank. There are plenty of Pokemon with a lesser rank than this that will meet this attack stat and this defense stat, and those ones are going to be great as well. So don't count those ones out. These are just some ones to highlight. Now, if you do want to know what the stats are on your specific Machamp, you can always use PvPoke and punch it in there, or you can use the Go Stadium IV checker and you can punch them in there too, and it will tell you what the attack, defense, and HP stat are, like the true stats of your Shadow Machamp. And then, as far as the highlighted stats here go, I did highlight the attack stats that end up being a bit lower than 175.5. So like 175.49, is it that big of a difference? I guess it could be, but it's not that big of a deal. 175.44, okay. 123.71, we're getting kind of thrifty here. But 164 HP, that's pretty big. That's some pretty big HP. So yeah, I just highlighted stuff that doesn't meet the exact cutoffs, but are close enough. You don't have to be a complete snob here when it comes to the Machamp IVs. And then as far as the HP stat goes, I think if you've got greater than, like a 158 or 157, you're probably fine. HP doesn't seem to be like that big of a deal for Shadow Machamp. It's mostly getting KO'd on the charge move, and if it is getting KO'd on the fast move, it's getting KO'd by like so much that, you know, 2 or 3 extra HP isn't going to save you. But it is important to keep in mind that HP there, because you still will run into those situations where just having that 1 HP saves the day. If you're curious about my personal Machamp here, I'm using the rank 154. So, you know, cleanly hits the 175.6, shoots the moon with the 126.38 defense stat, and then 160 HP. So a very respectable Machamp. I did not know everything I know right now when I built this Shadow Machamp like a year ago, and I'm quite pleased to see that my Shadow Machamp is doing quite well when it comes to this scenario here. But once again, these aren't the ultimate Machamp IV spreads. This is just like a handful of IV spreads that highlight what I've been talking about in the video. If you have a slightly lower attack stat, not that big of a deal. If you got like a lower defense stat, I guess that could be a big deal if Dragonite gets a breakpoint on you, but not that big of a deal. Also, one thing I think that's pretty interesting with this whole CMP situation is you don't see this in any of the other PvP IV deep dives that I do, because it's very rare for it to be relevant, especially in the Great League, because there are so many different threats in the Great League. Like, is CMP really going to matter for a Pokemon? In the Ultra League, there is a much more limited pool of Pokemon, so I feel like for Machamp, getting this can be a pretty big deal. One thing that I noticed when I was going through the different attack stats of Pokemon, just like one by one on PvPoke, was there was a lot of Pokemon that like fell into like the low 150s for attack stat, which is pretty interesting there. And when it comes to my Dragalge deep dive video I did a while back, where I promoted an Atk Weighted Dragalge and focused on matchups where it was getting attack breakpoints that allow you to flip the matchup with your higher attack stat, hitting a breakpoint, so just doing more Dragon Tail damage, that Dragalge does hit higher than like a 155 attack stat, which is pretty interesting, because not only is it getting those cool breakpoints, unlike our friend Machamp here, but it's also getting CMP for a ton of Ultra League matchups as well. So I think that's pretty cool. So if you haven't checked out my Dragalge PvP IV deep dive for the Ultra League yet, I'll link up above and in the description to that video so you can build the right Dragalge. That Dragalge, totally better than the rank 1. This Machamp situation, potentially better than the rank 1. So what does this all mean for normal Machamp? Is normal Machamp going to benefit from having an attack weight too? Well, if you guys are familiar, Shadow Pokemon have a higher attack stat, but a lower defense stat than normal Pokemon. But these stat changes are coming from a bonus, not their raw stats. So when it comes to CMP, Machamp and Shadow Machamp effectively have the same attack stat. But when it comes to breakpoints and bulk points, they definitely have different attack and defense stats. Like, you'll get the same CMP ties, but a Shadow Machamp's counter, rock slide, and cross chop damage more often than not is going to be, you know, greater than a normal Machamp. So when it comes to that, there are different things to consider for a regular Machamp. On top of that, I didn't take as much time to look into regular Machamp here. Regular Machamp is kind of like a aforementioned tack on to this video, so I don't feel super confident telling you guys to use a really high attack weighted normal Machamp compared to you know, a rank 1, a high bulk regular Machamp, because, you know, there may be matchups that I'm not considering when it comes to regular Machamp. That said, there are some interesting things I did find out about regular Machamp that you may want to be aware of if you are looking to build a regular Machamp for the Ultra League. And I can say with confidence that, at least based on one of these matchups I found, I think a very slightly attack-weighted Machamp, at the very least, is definitely better than the rank 1 Machamp. And that's mostly because the slight attack weight is like the rank 2 and the rank 5. But if you built the rank 1 normal Machamp, you may want to build a second Machamp when you find out about this specific matchup situation. So when it comes to Machamp, normal Machamp's attack stat, I found 3 matchups where having that breakpoint can be slightly relevant. The first of which is going to be up against XL Umbreon. Having a 172.72 attack stat can give you a breakpoint there. Now, does that flip the matchup? Does it make the matchup more consistent? That I don't know for certain. I mean, I guess Umbreon is kind of a safe swap Pokemon. Machamp is also kind of like a safe swap and counter swap type Pokemon. So in a sense, having that higher attack stat could save you from getting hit from some extra charge move damage. I guess especially now that we got Psychic on the table. I didn't think about that when making this video. Psychic is on the table now, so having that slightly higher attack stat to close out the fight even sooner could be a big deal for normal Machamp here. But that said, hitting a 172.72 attack stat is pretty small beans. I mean, the rank 1 does miss it, but just about every single Machamp should be hitting that attack stat for the most part. What's a slightly bigger deal, however, is going to be up against Stunfisk, where you need a 173.23 attack stat. Once again, a very slightly higher attack stat, but having that breakpoint can be a really big deal. When it comes to the 1-1 shield scenario, for example, if you have that attack stat against the XL Galar Stunfisk in the Ultra League, if you got that attack stat, then they can't double Earthquake you in the 1-1 shield scenario. So if they throw Earthquake and you shield that Earthquake, you can keep on punching them with confidence, knowing that they can only reach the Rock Slide before you KO them. They won't be able to reach that second Earthquake. To add to this attack breakpoint can also clip them in the 2 shield scenario from being able to go Rock Slide, Earthquake. So if they throw a Rock Slide, you shielded it like a chump, and then they throw another Rock Slide and you shield it like a chump, well, who's the real chump? Because you got the attack breakpoint on them, and they ain't gonna be reaching that Earthquake unless they have like a 2 fast move energy lead. So that's just another bit of tech that can help out Machamp here when it comes to the Galar Stunfisk matchup. Is this breakpoint going to help you flip these matchups and, you know, make Machamp win the matchup where it wouldn't otherwise? Not exactly, but not getting hit by Earthquake, that's a pretty big deal. That's a ton of damage, and now you don't have that damage on you. You've got all that HP to reach even more Rock Slides and Cross Chops for the next thing that comes in. Your chances of getting farmed down by the next thing in also quite lower there. So having that ever so slight attack weight on your Machamp can be a big deal. And when it comes to that attack weight, I think like the rank 2 and the rank 5 are hitting that 173.23 attack stat or higher. So I think that's kind of goofy. Like the rank 1, man, you're missing Umbreon, you're missing Galar Stunfisk. What are you doing? You should have built the rank 2, you stupid idiot. Like, how could you have known? You know, how could you have known? But I just think that's funny when it comes to normal Machamp. And then there is another situation I noticed with a even higher weighted attack Machamp there, the 175.77 attack stat, and that's against the XL Abomasnow. With that breakpoint, if you're in the 1-1 shield scenario, you can cross chop them, they shield it, and then you can farm them down. And when you farm them down with the attack breakpoint, they won't be able to reach the 3rd Weather Ball, you know, assuming they don't have a 2 fast move energy lead, or, you know, if they have less than perfect HP, then that helps you out too. At any rate, that's another interesting thing that can come up if you do gun for an even higher weighted attack normal Machamp. Now, is this as relevant as the Galar Stunfisk situation or the Umbreon situation? Not exactly, but it's just like another extra cool thing it can do. But when it comes to regular Machamp, once again, I want to emphasize that I didn't go through all the matchups with a fine-tooth comb like I did with Shadow Machamp here. So trading your bulk for that higher attack stat, especially when it comes to the Abomasnow situation, you could be trading a bit too much. I don't know for certain how much you're giving up there. But when it comes to Galar Stunfisk, at least, like that's the rank 2. That's the rank 5. You're not giving up that much bulk to get that swag. And that about wraps it up for the Shadow Machamp Ultra League PvP IV deep dive here. Hope you learned something new about Shadow Machamp. And if you were holding out on building Shadow Machamp before because you didn't have like a good rank Shadow Machamp, I hope this helped guide you to a workable Shadow Machamp that can get some interesting advantages in the Ultra League PvP here. Of course, if you got any questions on this content, comment below, let me know what's up, and I'll be happy to help you out. And if you enjoyed this kind of content and you want to see more like it, make sure to subscribe to SwagTips. SwagTips. I'd also like to give a special shout out to these Patreon supporters. If you want to support Swagman on Patreon, link in the description. Why do I have the CP highlighted still? Why did I delete everything else but I kept CP? I don't know. Alright, whatever. Alright. So if you want some canned IV spreads here,